It's finally time to complete the original Mistborn trilogy. You're about to watch me read The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. I'll be updating you per part with my thoughts as I'm reading the book. I definitely have high expectations for this book. I know that I wasn't really that much of a fan of the second book, but there were a lot of comments on that video talking about how it's setting up for this book, that this book is really good as the first book, and the way that the second book ended, definitely I'm really interested about that stuff that came out of the well, the ruin, and what that is, and how the story is going to conclude itself, and just go back into this world, hang out with Vin and Elend and all those good stuff, see how Kelsier's influence continues to bleed across the story, and of course, my man Sazed. Definitely a little bit nervous though, because this is the final book. And I don't know how Brandon Sanderson is gonna hurt me this time. I know he will, I just don't know how. And so I have to mentally prepare myself because this is the final one, my friends. So without further ado, let's read The Hero of Ages, the final book in the original trilogy. I just finished part 1 of 5 of The Hero of Ages, and here are my thoughts so far. I like that this book went straight into the action. There's a little battle that was happening with the Colas, and so we're 1 year after the events of the last book, which I thought was interesting because I was like, oh wow, it's already a year. I thought maybe it was gonna continue right after, but no, so a year has passed, and so we know that Elend is kind of learning more of his powers, and Vin is helping train him, which is a really cool dynamic. And he seems to be really, really good at just being really strong. So I thought that was really cool. They kind of hinted that he seems to be an anomaly in that kind of way. So I like that. It's cool that they're both Mistborn, but they're both very different in which parts they excel at. So I liked seeing that. I liked seeing how they can manipulate the Colas to be on their side, and basically what their mission is right now, because we know Ruin had kind of been freed from the Well of Ascension, and so Vin and Elend and the rest of their friends are basically going to these different areas where the Lord Ruler had put kind of notes and maps and food and all of this stuff for people to survive on. And so we know that in the Well of Ascension, that was the first one, and so they're basically going place to place trying to find the ATM, because we know that that's the metal that they really, really need. And so they've gone to all those places except for that one. So that's where they're kind of on their way to now. The two stories though that I'm more interested in are Sazed stories and TenSoon's story. So we know in the last book that TenSoon had actually eaten Orange Seer, I think is how you say the guy's name, and pretended to be him, and then he actually ended up saving Vin's life, but that went against his contract of the Conda. And so he's basically been this pile of goo for a year and a bit, and then now he is doing a trial to basically try to convince all of the different generations that he did the right thing and that they need to move away from what they were doing before and go to something a little bit more new, and new is basically helping Vin and friends. So I really like him and learning more about the Kandra and basically that whole entire world that we know is so mysterious and we don't really know that much about. So I like that this book is really painting more about that aspect, as well as the Colas. We met a Colas who's named Human, and I thought he was really interesting. I hope we see more of him. And then Sazed. My man Sazed is having a midlife crisis, or I don't actually know if he's midlife, but you get the idea. And so a year has passed and he's still he doesn't feel whole now that his love has passed away, as what happened in the last book. And so he's basically just trying to prove every single religion false, but he's also at the same time looking for one that will give him answers to what happened to her soul. So I think that that's really interesting, and my heart breaks for him. He's in so much pain, and I just hope that he's okay later. He's my favorite character. I just want him to be okay. And then last but not least, we do get a perspective of Marsh, which is another really interesting kind of thing because we know that he was turned into like one of the Inquisitor, Obligator, I mixed those two up, but the people with the spikes through them, and they're adding more spikes through them. So I think that that's cool, and being able to get his perspective because we didn't really get that. You see that he's doing things, but he also doesn't want to do those things, but he's doing those things and he doesn't understand why he's doing those things. The chapters, at least in this first part, are really giving you a good perspective into his psyche and like why he's making certain decisions. So I think that that's really cool, and I'm excited for really just like the next part of this book because I think this was just laying the groundwork. It was a little bit more of like reintroduction, but it was okay because I purposely waited a little bit to pick up, like to read the third book, because the second book there was also a lot of reintroduction. So I find that if I read immediately after, I'm like, yeah, I already know, let's get on with it. So yeah, my strategy worked. So I will see you when I finish the second part. Last night I finished part 2 of The Hero of Ages, and I didn't expect to like Spook's chapters as much as I did, but I really, really did. And then Tensoon's chapters, and of course Sazed. He wasn't in this like part as much, but it really was Spook and Tensoon who took the show in this part. So I think for me, Spook's chapter is the most interesting because he's always been kind of like in the background of all of the books, but now he's really starting to shine and we get his perspective and a bit of his like really sad backstory and how he ended up with clubs, and then kind of like how his tin eye powers kind of work for him and the kind of situations that he's in, and then what happened with that building that was burning. I don't think that that was what we think it is. I think that Ruin is doing something, trying to get people to follow a particular path, because we know Ruin has done that definitely like the entire time, especially with what we learned about Ruin's influence with the 11th metal. So I'm excited to see, but I'm also like a little bit nervous. But like if it isn't Ruin, then it's like, what does that mean if it isn't Ruin doing that? Like, how is that possible? And if it is possible, how is that going to affect Sazed's character? I don't know, but I'm excited to see. And then Tensoon. I really grew to love Tensoon in the second book, especially when we learned who Tensoon actually was. And so following along, like, he's evolved so much as a character and as a Kandra, and learning more about the dynamics and the different generations and how he's interacting and how he's really just like setting the bar in like, how do you evolve with the change in times? And he's clever and he's fun, and I'm so excited to see what he does next. I really, really like him, and he's just like so fascinating to me. And then, okay, Elend and Vin's scene when they infiltrated the ballroom thing that was happening. That was like peak. That was peak moment in their relationship. I loved it so much. It was such a good foil from comparing to the first book to now. And it's like so many years have passed, and it's like, yes, dance together, please. You deserve it. You guys have never danced together, and I can't believe you've never danced together. And it was really cute. And I think that it was a really good way that it like captured the relationship that they have. And it was good stuff. And Hoyd was mentioned again, aka Wit. But Vin was like, my gut's telling me not to go see this guy, so she left. And so I was like, I wonder about that. And I noticed as well that there was mention of Spren. And I was like, wait a second, Spren? I know where Spren come from. I know what book those are in. So I like finding these little Easter eggs because I had read Stormlight Archive already. And I bet that if I was to reread it, I would notice a bunch of things from this book and probably other Brandon Sanderson books as well. So it's really fun when I see these things and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. I know what that is. It's not just something I'm reading and being like dismissing as just like something that's mentioned. It's like, no, there's more to this. And I'm like, yes. So I'm going to continue to read. I'm now starting part 3 of The Hero of Ages. And apparently it's only like 100 pages for this part. So I'm like, that's a little bit strange. So I will see you pretty soon, to be honest. So yeah, I'm excited, and I will update you with my thoughts then. I just finished part 3 of The Hero of Ages, and I thought that was a really cool discovery about the colas and like where they came from, how they breed, all of that, and human becomes more and more interesting to me. I love every single scene that he's in. I think that he's so fascinating, especially like what we learned from him, I thought was really good. As we're following along the story with all of our characters in like slightly different areas, we have like Breeze, Sazed, and Spook in one area, and then we have Elend, Vin, Ham in another area. And so when it comes to like Spook's end, more and more I'm definitely confident about my first hunch about what was happening, especially because like each of the chapters, they have like, what's a good example? Each of the chapters have like this kind of like blurb that sounds like it's coming from Sazed, like he made some kind of like documentation of the events of everything that's kind of happening, especially as it relates to the different types of like metal control. I think is a good way to kind of like categorize them. And based on that, we're getting a lot more insight into the 3 different types. And so that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure my hunch is accurate, especially what we learned with what happened with Marsh and Penrod. So I'm a bit nervous about what's gonna happen with that. Something that I am not sure and I haven't been able to figure out is about like the mist sickness and like what the number 16 means in terms of like how all of that connects. Like, what does that mean? Why is it 16? That kind of stuff. So I will now be starting part 4 of The Hero of Ages. So I will update you when I finish this part. So I will see you then. I just finished part 4 of The Hero of Ages, and I went through that so quickly. I was like, whoa, what's going on? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And so there's a lot of different things happening, a bunch of moving parts. The world is literally on fire. Ash goes like up to your hips at this point when you go outside. Like, the world is falling apart, to be honest. And so it's really interesting to see like how everything's kind of crumbling around, but our characters continue to like fight forward and figure out like, how can we stop this? What can we do about ruin? And then we learned some really cool stuff about this character named Preservation. And I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say it was really cool because you can't have one without the other. And so I really like that character, and it's cool to finally have like a name for it. And yeah, there's like a whole story behind that. It's also really interesting to see kind of like Vin's perspective when she's not with the other characters, when she's kind of on her own in a way, and how she's thinking through things, and she's like, I wonder what this means. And the reason that it was called Beautiful Destroyer for the part, that was interesting to me. So I feel like, I mean, there's only one part left of this book, and this is the last book, so I think that there's going to be more insights into that. We're definitely going to learn more about ruin. For some reason, I feel like this book is not going to have a happy ending. And I'm a bit nervous about that because I want my characters to be happy and safe. And Sazed, my man Sazed, he needs some love. And there was a moment where he was doing some engineering, and it just made me really happy when he was talking to Breeze about it. And I'm like, yes, I love that. Such a cool guy. I love him. I wish that there was more Sazed in this book, but I actually do really love the chapters that we're getting with Spook and with Tensoon. I really like them, and I think that it really just makes this book so rich and fun and different. And honestly, I'm pretty hooked. I really like it, and I'm having a really good time with it. And the way that like Kelsier's influence continues to bleed across the entire empire, as well as the Lord Ruler and like all of this, and I'm like, that's really cool. So I wonder, because there's like another Mistborn series after this one, I wonder if Kelsier and Lord Ruler, like their kind of religions are going to be in that new series or not. But I'm excited to find out. I feel like they will be, and it's cool. I'm definitely a bit nervous though, because I don't know how this story is going to wrap up. I'm about to start the final part, so wish me luck. I'm very scared. Brandon Sanderson knows how to rip my heart into a million pieces. Let's hope I make it out of this book okay. I just finished The Hero of Ages, and that was really bittersweet. That ending was so bittersweet. I literally just like stared out into nothing for like 10 minutes just to like process everything that just happened. Brandon Sanderson definitely loves to rip your heart out and really hurt you in so many ways. And he managed to do that, especially with the ending, in like some really devastating ways, but also in some ways that make you like happy sad. In a way, like, I think that's the best way to describe it. And so overall for me, I definitely enjoyed this book. I would say that a lot of the like big plot twists and stuff I did find pretty predictable, which I was a little bit disappointed about. And I think it's just because I had too high expectations, because the way that Stormlight Archive just like destroyed my brain over and over is kind of what I expected, but I also have to understand that this is some of his like earlier work. And so there were aspects of it where it was pretty predictable. I could guess the plot twist like even books prior, which is kind of cool to kind of like look back on those and I'm like, oh, I guess these foreshadowing things correctly, which was cool. But even though it was predictable at times, there were definitely moments where I was like, whoa, like yes. And so I think that makes up for it. Something that I did find interesting about this one, and not just this book, but like the Mistborn series as a whole, or at least the original one, is that there's the usage of the word awesome a lot. And I don't know why, maybe I'm just overly picky, but that just rubs me the wrong way. Something about the word awesome, and there are some other like kind of more modern-ish words that were in these books that I just felt it was a little bit disconnected. But I mean, maybe that's just me. I have no idea, but that's just how I felt about that. However, when I think about the world building, Brandon Sanderson is the master of world building. This universe feels so real that when I'm reading it, I completely forget that it's not a real place and that these characters aren't real and everything that happens is just fiction. And he does such an amazing job at just creating these universes, and everything just seems to make sense. Like the science adds up, the technology adds up, there's limits, the magic systems work, and they all make sense, and it's just so good. I love this man's brain. I love it so much. And I think really some of the standouts for me in this book were definitely the focus on Spook's character. I really liked because he was so just like not really focused on in the first two books, and so he really had his time to shine in this book, and I absolutely love it. I don't know if maybe there's a short story or something about him. I have to check, but yeah, I have to find out what the next read-in order is for the rest of these books. Another big standout and characters who definitely stole the show in this book were of course Sazed and Tensoon. They, hands down, my favorite characters of the entire series. I love everything about it, especially like Sazed's arc about trying to figure out like what is the true religion and what is the meaning of faith, and as he's trying to struggle with that. And I thought that was really cool because I feel like that's something that a lot of people perhaps even struggle with. I know like myself, I was like, I would love to believe in something, but I just can't. And I thought that it was a really realistic struggle to watch him go through. And he's like trying to figure out, trying to find the flaws, but then like the similarities, and he's like, what is the real religion? Like, what does this mean? What does that mean not just for me, but what does that mean for like other people? Why do we have this? And how do I know for sure that it's right? And he would talk to different characters about it. And I'm not a religious person, and it was just done in a really great way, because sometimes you can find it like it really gets a little bit too religious, but I think that this is like the perfect level of it, and it kind of makes you just think about life in general. So overall, this was definitely quite the journey, quite the ride. I had a really good time with all of this. I do think that the first book is definitely my favorite in the series, but this one is pretty good as well. I guess one other thing that I would want to add, and this is just like my overall thing that I would just love to see more in Brandon Sanderson books, is I would love to see stronger romances. Like, I think he does a really great job creating amazing worlds, creating amazing characters, and he does have romances, but the chemistry never really feels like it's there for me. And this is as somebody who's like an avid romance reader, so I would absolutely love to see some really well thought out, well constructed romance with his like amazing world building skills. I would eat that up. 100% I'd eat that up. So I will be awarding the Hero of Ages a total of 4 stars. I was really debating between 4 and 4.5 stars, but my gut's telling me 4 stars. I think I'm still trying to process the ending of this book. So when I do my like end of month book haul, the number of stars may change. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I like that it was like it was bittersweet, but it's also open-ended. And so I think that that's a good reflection, because I know that there's the Wax and Wane series that I think is what I read next, or I have to read the novella next. Again, I have to double check that because I'm not entirely sure. But this did a pretty good setup for that. But I know that that book takes place like 300 years later. So I feel like there's just something empty. I don't know, maybe it's just my heart. Maybe my heart's just empty now because I'm sad that I'm done. So the next book that I'll be reading is Wicked Curses by Brenda K. Davies. This is the 7th book in the Shadow Realms series that I'm reading, so I'm very excited to pick this one up. It focuses on some different characters in the story. Now that we've kind of had the main focus on our other characters, now it's focusing more on like the side characters, so they get their own stories and their own arcs, and I'm really excited about it. So if you're interested in watching me read the next Shadow Realms book, or whatever the next Brandon Sanderson Mistborn book that I'm supposed to be reading is next, and you haven't already, definitely hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you really loved the entire trilogy of the Mistborn series, the original Mistborn trilogy, and you enjoyed my reactions and me watching and just kind of going through the entire experience, definitely hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!